Taking a peek at the steering wheel as well as the cluster screen inside of the Mercedes-Benz GLS 580. While this is specifically the GLS 580, you're going to notice a lot of similar functionality inside of a number of other Mercedes vehicles. First thing I'm going to point out is that the steering wheel is a power telescoping. So there's a knob just by your left knee, so you can go in, out, up, and down for it to create that perfect position for you. Once it's set up the way that you'd like, you can also set up your driver's seat the way that you'd like. So the buttons along the door there. Set up your side view mirror the way that you'd like, using the buttons along the bottom left side along the door. And once those are all set up, you could then create your own perfect position, so your seat memory. All you're going to do is hit the M button first, and then either 1, 2, or 3 for it to lock in that perfect position for you. So you heard there was a little chime there. The steering wheel is comfortable, and it's also heated. To turn the heated steering wheel on, just above that tab, in order to move the steering wheel around, there's a button. You can go one way or the other to turn the heated steering wheel on or off. Now, the stick on the left-hand side is going to be for flashing at your high beams. If you wanted to permanently lock your beams out, there's a selector switch just by your left knee there. You have to be out of the auto mode in order to be able to do it. So that's not going to work. We have to be all the way to the right side. And then you can push away in order to permanently lock your high beams on instead. But you could always flash regardless of the mode that you're in. Now, one thing that I will recommend is keeping yourself in the auto mode the majority of the time, because what the vehicle is going to do is if it senses that it needs the high beams, it's automatically going to turn them on. If somebody's oncoming, it's going to dim them and then bring them right back on again. So it's really smart from that perspective. You can also adjust the windshield wiper speed on the very left side there. And there's a button on the very tip of that left stick, and that's going to be for your front wiper fluid. For the rear, you can see that there are 2 buttons there. The one on the left-hand side is going to be for your rear wiper fluid. The one on the right side there is going to be to actually turn that rear wiper on or off. So you can see that going there. Stick on the right-hand side is going to be your gear shifter. So in order to be able to change gears, just make sure you've got your foot on the brake pedal first. You're going to go all the way up for reverse. That beautiful 360 camera. I love the auto mode there. Oh, that looks so good. So you've got that. You can drop down lightly in order to go into neutral, drop down all the way for drive, and then the button on the tip of that stick is to put yourself back into park again. So it's very straightforward actually using them. And then you've got your paddle shifters. So your minus on the left-hand side and your plus on the right-hand side. But if you're lower, like 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 RPM, you can drop gears in order to get some additional speed. You could also use that to rely on engine braking as well. So you just slow yourself down this way, and then you can plus gears that way instead. But if you want an actual walkthrough on how paddle shifters work in real life, check down in the description of the video. I put together a pretty comprehensive walkthrough. As you can see there are a series of different buttons that are available. First, I'm going to point out, going to be on the top right-hand side. And this is going to be to adjust what's going on inside of the infotainment system. So it's a little bit touchy, but once you get the hang of it, it's really simple to use at the same time. So you can scroll all the way around if you'd like to. And then just button press to get back home. You've got your basic back button. So if we drive into, let's say, where are we going to go? Comfort for a second. Down, comfort, there we go. So you can see there all of your options. You've got a basic back button and things like that. The pad there it's useful because you can drive with your hands on the steering wheel and adjust it that way. But then just down the center as well, you've also got your little trackpad there. And that's going to let you move through. I find that this is a little bit more intuitive or user-friendly in comparison, but that one's going to be a matter of preference. But it's just nice to know that you can adjust through the cluster or the infotainment system this way instead. Along the right side, there are a series of other buttons. So you could either answer or hang up on a phone call. There's also the option of adjusting your volume this way. So you're sliding your finger up and down in order to adjust the volume, or pushing down in order to mute. So it's very straightforward to use it. It takes a little bit of getting used to though. There's also a little star button, so that brings up your favorites. So you can do a number of different things inside of that favorite screen. So loop record, parking assist, and a number of other things. And back. But if you want a full walkthrough on the infotainment system, you'll find that down in the description of the video. There's also a voice command prompt. So you can use that in order to do things like change songs, radio stations. You can navigate using your voice. You can push the voice command prompt if you want to, but you can also say, "Hey Mercedes,
how can I help?"
Tune to 94.9 FM. There we go. And it's changed the station for us. So it's very straightforward, being able to use that voice assistant. So whether or not you say Mercedes versus this, it's going to be a matter of personal preference. Now, along the left-hand side, you've also got a series of other options, and this is specifically for cruise control, so your adaptive cruise. You can turn the system on this way. Once you start driving, you can then push down or up in order to set your speed. And then from there, you're just going to roll your finger up and down in order to be able to scroll essentially 1 kilometer or 1 mile per hour at a time. And then if you do a press and hold, either up or down, it's going to jump you 10 kilometers or 10 miles per hour at a time instead. You've got a cancel button, so if the adaptive cruise control system's going, you hit cancel to temporarily pause it. You can hit the brake to temporarily pause it, and then resume in order to resume your previously set speed. This one's a distance indicator, so it's how close or far are you away from the vehicle that's in front of you. So you can see 4 different levels there. If you're going to be using it just on regular residential streets, I find level 1 is more than enough. On the highway, I'm generally jumping in between either 2 or 3, just depending on the flow of traffic. But like I said, regular residential streets, you're just going to be that level 1 instead. But it gives you a pretty neat look as you actually start driving as well. But yeah, like I said, if you want a full walkthrough on how to actually use the adaptive cruise control system and see it actually working in person, you'll find that walkthrough down in the description as well. And then you've also got this button, so these series of buttons along the top left-hand side, and that's going to actually let you navigate through the cluster screen. So before I jump through, let's zoom in a tiny little bit so we can figure out what's going on inside of that cluster, because there's a lot to it. So you've got your speedometer off to the left-hand side, tachometer off to the right-hand side, outside temperature, what gear you're currently in. So as you change gears, you can see it adjusting there. From there, we're also in park right now. The outside, well, the current time, I should say, your current fuel level displayed a few different ways. So it's kilometers till empty, and then your total fuel tank as well. So right now I'm sitting at a little over 3/4 of a tank of fuel. Along the top, if there was a posted road sign, that would show up. The adaptive cruise control system's turned on or off there. And then as you have your distance indicator going with the adaptive cruise on, it also shows up this way instead. You've got your current speed. If you were driving, hands on the steering wheel, that would go green, letting you know that your hands are on the wheel and you're good to go. This one is going to be your lane following system. So again, as long as you're driving, that's going to go green. And as long as it recognizes the lane markings, it's going to keep you perfectly balanced in your lane. Not fully self-driving, but very, very close at the same time, especially when you have the adaptive cruise control system going. You still have to keep your hands on the steering wheel, but it's going to keep you perfectly balanced. It's also going to keep flow with traffic as well. It's a really great system. And then you've got your cluster screen. But as you go through, so you push the home icon there, and that's going to let you go between a few different options for the look. So you've got your basic, understated look. It's so neat. Then you can kind of swipe across if you want to, but going back home, I love the look of the sport mode. That's just me personally. I mean, I think that looks so cool. Oh, that's good. You've got your basic classic screen there as well. So shooting across to go classic. One thing that you might notice is as you're scrolling across yourself, you might find that pushing the OK button accidentally jumps you up to the top row there if you've got the head-up display. I'll show you what that looks like in just a second, but I find that if you push OK a little bit lower on the screen of the stick there instead, that's going to let you easily jump between that option. So if we go off-road, push there, look at that off-road mode. So you can see your vehicle's pitch versus roll, so very useful if you're planning to take the vehicle off-road. GPS coordinates are there too, so if you're off-roading and you get stuck, you could then give a tow truck your exact GPS coordinates too. Then there's a basic service screen mode where you can see everything that's available. If your assist systems are active, what your current tire pressure is, oil engine level, coolant temperature, things like that. Really, really neat. Back home, but yeah, like I said, I am personally a bigger fan of the sport mode, but having all of these different modes is pretty neat at the same time. Okay, so if we go into our classic for a second there, you've then got a series of other options here. So you've got your current odometer dropping down from start. So when the vehicle was last turned on, that's what you're averaging. So it's this horrible, horrible fuel economy right now just because I'm sitting here explaining to you what's going on inside the vehicle. But as you start driving, you'll notice that numbers start decreasing. You could also do a press and hold in order to set it as a shortcut instead if you want to. From reset, so it's since the last time this has actually been reset, You can reset it as well. So essentially, if you wanted to reset your values, you've got the flexibility to do it. And yeah, 99 liters at 100, it's brutal. As you start driving, you're going to notice this. So this is essentially your eco driving mode. And then current total fuel consumption, your attention assist. So if you had any of the assist systems going, it's going to let you know what's going on there. And then your radio. So you've got the option of kind of flipping through as well. So if you wanted to jump between all of the available stations, you've got that option. But yeah, like I said, just using the voice command prompt or using the Mercedes voice assistant is the best way to change stations, in my opinion. From there, last one is going to be a little mapping cluster. So it's kind of neat that you've got the flexibility to adjust this out. The navigation one is kind of neat because you've got full mapping cluster. So if you don't want to be too distracted by looking over in the infotainment system, and it still gives you all of the necessary information there. But yeah, like I said, just from the basic look perspective, I prefer the way that sport mode looks. Now on top of that, as you scroll up, there are a series of other options here. And this is going to be different options for the head-up display. So as you jump between all the different modes, you can see the way that it looks. So you've got your basic minimal mode versus a sport mode. Gives you your RPMs there as you go. A standard mode, and that's just got your basic information. So speed sign, whether or not you've got your hands on the steering wheel. The off-road mode, which I think that looks super neat. That looks really cool. And then from there, shooting across your settings. And then adjusting your settings, you could move the screen up or down. You can adjust the brightness by swiping left and right. I always just recommend keeping it in the max available brightness, and that's just so that you can see a little bit easier. From there, you can actually toggle the whole head-up display on or off. So if you just don't want the head-up display, you can toggle it off, but I mean, it's really unobtrusive. So I just recommend keeping it on. Now there's one thing, I'm actually curious if this is gonna work, but if you wear polarized sunglasses, there we go, yeah, you can actually see it. Look at how tricky it is to actually see what's going on in the head-up display. So that's one thing that I'm going to point out, is that if you tend to wear polarized sunglasses, it's going to be pretty tricky to see what's going on in that head-up display. And that's maximum brightness, but that's actually kind of neat that you can see what the difference is there. All of the technology inside the vehicle though is amazing. So just basic drive technology. Like I've got the adaptive cruise control system going right now. The speed limit on the road that I'm on is 100 kilometers an hour. So it's just got me coasting, which is great. And you can see there, it's recognized the lane markings as well. So it's going to keep me perfectly balanced in the lane. If you hit the left turn stick or the right turn stick, as long as there's nobody next to you, it can automatically change lanes for you. So you can go left versus right, and it does it automatically and very quickly at the same time. And even the driving assist technology. So, I mean, my hands are off the wheel right now. We're getting ready to go around a bend, but it's going to keep you perfectly balanced in the lane. But you do have to eventually put your hands back on the steering wheel. So it's not full self-driving, but watch this. So it's keeping me nice and balanced in the lane here. Taking you around the bend perfectly. So see there, the wheel starts to rotate by itself. There we go. And it's warned me that I've got to have my hands back on the steering wheel. So that's one thing. Like I said, it's not full self-driving from that perspective. So your hands do still have to be on the wheel. But I mean, it's taking me around the bend perfectly. It is a very, very smart system. So I know that's quite a lot of information, but that's everything you need to know about the steering wheel as well as the cluster screen inside of the GLS 580.